We've all experienced at some point in our life that feeling of drowning. I don't mean real drowning, but I do mean that we've all experienced this sort of chaos that the world has. And in those moments when it feels like everything is just all around us going crazy and chaotic, and it feels like we're drowning, it seems like all we're trying to do is keep our head above water. Seems like we're just trying to look for stable ground. It seems like we're just trying to look for the shore. And what if I told you that the shore in the scriptures isn't just a place where dirt and water meet, or just a place where sand and the waves meet, but the shore actually represents something much bigger all throughout the scriptures that I've been studying and I want to share with you. And what it represents is this peace of God, and it represents that peace of God going at war with the chaos of the enemy. And as we look at this shore, I'm calling this concept this cosmic shore, because it's a spiritual battle. And this spiritual battle is one that, our God, our Yahweh God, Jesus, has already won. He's already defeated sin and death. But it represents something that is all throughout the scriptures. It's this thread that we see from the book of Genesis all the way to Revelation. And what I want to do is, over these next few interludes, is illustrate this shore concept to you and show you how our God is the God who's in control. Our God is the God who has defeated the chaos, and he continues to defeat the chaos time after time, moment after moment in the scriptures. But to start, we have to go back to the very beginning. And the very beginning is the book of Genesis. So turn with me to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 to 2. Now Genesis 1, verse 1 to 2, it says this: "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters." This text is so poetic. This text is so foundational to all that we believe as Christians. And when you look at this text, there's so much going on here. On the surface, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on, but when you look at it and you understand the language of the time, there's a lot being said here, because it's saying that in the beginning was God, and God created all these things, and he was hovering over the language of the deep. Now, this idea of the deep and the waters, to the ancient mind, it wasn't a peaceful place. We think of the ocean and we think of the beach right now as this place where we go on vacations, or we go on cruises, or we go camping, or we sit out, at the beach and we enjoy these waters. But to the ancient mind, that's not what the ocean was. That's not what these waters were. This water, this ocean, to the ancient mind was a monster of destruction. It was disorder and death. It was complete chaos. This idea of the ocean, it was just chaotic waters is what it was. Now, I know that's hard for us to relate, but I bring it up because the author of Genesis was writing to a group of people who had that view. So we have to take a step back and look at, what was this author's intent for when he was communicating this idea about creation and our God in the very beginning? And what I see here is this word that he uses. He says, our God was hovering over the face of the deep. You see that here in verse 2? It says, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, to properly look at this text through the lens of the people of the time, we have to understand what they mean by the word the deep. Now, the Hebrew author was really intentional in using this word. He's using the same linguistic technique as the author of the book of John. So in the book of John, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And this word in the book of John is the Greek word logos. And when the writer in John was using this word logos, he was trying to communicate an idea to the people of the time about Greek philosophy, about the logos. And he was communicating this idea that this logos existed before time began and put on flesh and dwelt among us. So the author of Genesis is using that same literary technique to convey an idea to us about this chaos. Well, how so? Well, the text, it's saying, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, the word the author uses here for the deep is a Hebrew word, Tehom. And when he uses this word, He's actually pulling on this idea from the cultures of the time, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the people who lived around the Hebrew people at this time. And this word Tehom in the Hebrew, in their language, it was the word Taimet. And to them, it would spark this idea of, oh, the deep, the Tehom, the Taimet. Now, their idea of this, the deep, was actually this very scary chaos monster, this monster of destruction. It was this giant sea dragon that lived in the ocean. Now, what's important about this idea that they had of this chaos monster is that the way that this chaos monster was defeated to the cultures of the time and their creation story, that they believed how everything was created, they believed that this chaos monster went to war with this storm god, Marduk, is what his name was. And they believed that this chaos monster went to battle with this storm god. And there was this fight that happened in their creation story. And this storm god sliced open the belly of the chaos monster and he fell to earth, leaving the deep, the time at the chaos monster, the waters. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what did I just tune into? Why is Randall talking about this in this interlude? It's because I want you to see what the writer is trying to do here when he's communicating about how powerful our God is. So this creation story that I just shared with you about the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the surrounding people of what this chaos monster was, they viewed this chaos, this monster of the deep, this monster of destruction, as something that was only able to be defeated by a battle, by sword swinging, by violence and blood and all this stuff. And what does the writer of Genesis say? He says our Yahweh God was hovering over this chaos monster. Our God, the author is trying to communicate this idea. Our God uses this thing that you're so afraid of, this ancient mind was so fearful of. Our God uses that thing they're afraid of as a footstool. He simply just hovers over. It's no big deal to him. Our God doesn't have to swing a sword. Our God doesn't have to do anything to defeat this chaos monster. What our God does is he defeats it in verse 9 of Genesis chapter 1. How does he defeat it? Well, in verse 9, it says, and God said, let the waters, follow with me on this, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Do you see what happens in this text? Now again, we have to look at it through the lens of the people this was written to. And if they're reading this, these outside cultures reading, wait, this chaos monster was defeated by this Yahweh God, by this simple speaking of a word. It says, and God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place and let the dry land appear. What our Yahweh God did to defeat this monster that they believed in, he simply spoke and he put the chaos over here. He put the waters over here and drew what? What did he draw? He drew the shore representing the peace of God. Our God is so powerful that he treats this chaos that these people believed in as a simple footstool, and he's able to speak to it and say, you go there. You stop there, and peace begins here. Shore begins here. This place of Eden is starting to begin here. It's like a boundary that our God creates. And he keeps the chaos over here. He keeps the chaos in its place. You know, Jeremiah wrote about this too. He says it like this. In Jeremiah 5:22, he says, do you not fear me, declares the Lord? Do you not tremble before me? I place the sand as a boundary for the sea, a perpetual barrier that it cannot pass. Though the waves toss, they cannot prevail. Though they roar, they cannot pass over it. So in Jeremiah, what it's saying about our God is he puts the chaos in this place and he creates the shore. He creates the sand, this place of peace. And he does it by simply speaking a word. Now you see through this text, what it's illustrating to us is this idea that as these words are spoken, it's Jesus doing this power. It's Jesus behind this power. We see the God that we believe in, this Elohim God, this plural form of God, when it's mentioned in the beginning, God, Bereshit Elohim bara. That's the word Elohim. It's a plural form of God, and it represents Father, Son, Spirit. In Genesis chapter 1, we see the Father, Creator God, ordering all this stuff, ordering all this creation happening. We see the Spirit hovering over the face of the deep. And what do we see? We see Jesus, the Word, being spoken, ordering the chaos. Now, I do want to make it clear that this chaos, this is not sin. Genesis chapter 3 is when sin is entered in, but this, think of it like this unformed version of chaos is like this unordered potential for chaos. It isn't until Genesis chapter 3 that we tap into this chaos and sin enters the world and the curse is pressed upon humanity. But it's this unformed, this raw form that God puts over here with a simple word, and Jesus is the one behind that power. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. You're looking at me saying, Randall, I don't believe in mythology. I don't believe in, those monsters. That's just all myth. But to these people, this was very real. And when the writer of Genesis communicated this idea, it was huge to them. And I want you to see it through this same lens, because that chaos monster may seem like a silly idea to you, but we still experience that chaos monster. We're afraid of it when we get that cancer diagnosis. That chaos monster still hits us when your spouse says, I don't want to be married to you anymore. That chaos monster is that thing that wakes you up at 2 a.m. That chaos monster is that thing that hits when you lose your job. That chaos still presses against us. And the whole purpose of these interludes is so that I can remind you that our God is always wielding power over the chaos. Our God is in control of the chaos by what? Not by having to go to war with it like these other gods that people believe in. Our God defeats it by simply breathing a breath, by simply saying a word. The word that we have right here is that same power that puts the chaos in this place, is that same word that breathes life into existence, is that same word that we see doing the creation in Genesis chapter 1. So I want to remind you that that chaos monster is real and it presses on your life today. And I want you to call out to that God who has power over the chaos to put it in its place by the simple power of speaking a word.
Come and eat, come and see.